In the intricate and often turbulent chessboard of the Middle East, the nation of Syria has long been a pivotal square. For decades it has served as a battleground for competing global and regional powers, a nexus of alliances, and a flashpoint for conflict. But let us consider a hypothetical yet profound shift in this landscape. What if Syria were to fall firmly under the control of the United States and its key regional ally Israel? This is not merely a question of changing flags or political leadership. Such a development would represent a seismic geopolitical event, a game-changer with consequences that would ripple far beyond Syria's borders, reshaping the balance of power across the entire region and indeed the world. The implications would be vast and multifaceted. For Russia, it would mean the potential loss of its only warm-water naval port in the Mediterranean, a strategic foothold it has maintained for decades. For Iran, it would threaten the very existence of its axis of resistance, severing crucial supply lines to its allies and leaving it vulnerable. And for China, it would place a significant roadblock in the path of its ambitious Belt and Road Initiative, curbing its growing economic and political influence in this vital part of the world. This isn't just a regional power struggle, it's a scenario that could redefine the global competition between great powers. So, let's explore this complex scenario. Let's peel back the layers of diplomacy, military strategy, and economic ambition to understand what is truly at stake. How would this shift reorder alliances, redraw strategic maps, and potentially set the stage for new, more dangerous confrontations? The fall of the Assad regime and the rise of a pro-Western government in Damascus would not be an endpoint, but rather the beginning of a new, uncertain and potentially perilous chapter in the grand narrative of the 21st century. Join me as we delve into the far-reaching consequences of this geopolitical gambit. If you found this analysis insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more in-depth explorations of global events. Your support helps us bring you more content like this. For Moscow, Syria is far more than a simple ally. It is a critical strategic anchor in the eastern Mediterranean. The naval facility at Tartus is Russia's only direct year-round access to these crucial waters, a legacy of its Soviet past and a cornerstone of its modern naval doctrine. It allows the Russian fleet to project power, monitor NATO's southern flank, and sustain operations far from its home ports. Complementing this is the Khmeimim Air Base, which provides Russia with the aerial capability to influence events not just in Syria, but across the Levant and into North Africa. To lose these would be a devastating blow to Vladimir Putin's vision of a resurgent global Russia. Imagine a scenario where a new, US-aligned government in Damascus demands the immediate withdrawal of all Russian forces. Suddenly, the Black Sea Fleet, already constrained by the Montreux Convention and the Bosphorus Strait, would find its operational reach severely curtailed. The ability to rapidly deploy forces, conduct surveillance, or counter NATO naval movements in the Mediterranean would be dramatically weakened. This isn't just about losing a piece of real estate. It's about losing a fundamental capability that underpins Russia's status as a major military power in the region. The Kremlin's multi-billion-dollar investment in propping up the Assad regime would evaporate, leaving it with a significant strategic deficit. This loss would reverberate through Russia's entire foreign policy. Its credibility as a reliable partner and protector would be shattered in the eyes of other nations who might look to Moscow as a counterbalance to Washington. The psychological impact of being expelled from a region where Russia has invested so much blood and treasure would be immense. It would effectively push Russia back from the Middle East's core, forcing it to recalibrate its global posture from a position of weakness. The Mediterranean, once a stage for Russian power projection, would become a stark symbol of its diminished influence and strategic retreat. For the Islamic Republic of Iran, Syria is the indispensable land bridge, the central artery of its regional strategy. Tehran's axis of resistance, a network of allied states and proxy militias stretching from Iran to the Mediterranean, relies almost entirely on the geographic continuity provided by Syria. It is through Syrian territory that weapons, funds and personnel flow to its most powerful proxy, Hezbollah in Lebanon. This strategic depth allows Iran to challenge its primary adversary Israel on its northern border and project influence throughout the Levant. Without this corridor, Iran's entire regional architecture would be at risk of collapse. a pro-US/Israeli government in Damascus would act as an impassable barrier, effectively severing the axis. The overland supply routes from Iraq, through Syria, and into Lebanon would be cut off. Hezbollah, while still a formidable force, would find itself isolated, its ability to rearm and replenish its arsenal severely compromised. This would fundamentally alter the military balance between Hezbollah and Israel, emboldening Tel Aviv to act more decisively against the group. For Iran, this would be a catastrophic strategic setback, crippling its ability to deter Israel and maintain its forward defense posture. The very concept of the axis of resistance would be hollowed out. Furthermore, an American and Israeli presence in Syria would expose Iran's own assets and personnel in the country to unprecedented threats. Israeli airstrikes, which already target Iranian positions with regularity, would likely intensify with better intelligence and perhaps even direct ground support. Iran's dream of establishing a permanent military foothold in Syria would be extinguished. Instead of a strategic asset, Syria would become a strategic liability, a source of constant vulnerability. Tehran would be forced into a defensive crouch, its regional influence dramatically curtailed, and its long-held ambition of regional hegemony left in tatters. While China has maintained a more cautious and economically focused approach to the Syrian conflict, its long-term ambitions in the Middle East are undeniable. Syria, with its Mediterranean coastline and strategic location at the crossroads of Asia, Africa, and Europe, is a potentially vital node in Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative. Chinese state-owned companies have already expressed significant interest in post-war reconstruction, particularly in developing the port of Tartus and other critical infrastructure. For Beijing, Syria represents a gateway for Chinese goods to enter European markets, bypassing slower and more complex maritime routes. However, a Syria under the firm control of the United States and Israel would present a formidable obstacle to these plans. Washington would almost certainly leverage its influence to block or severely limit Chinese investment in strategic sectors like ports, railways, and telecommunications. The United States sees the Belt and Road Initiative not merely as an economic project, but as a tool of Chinese geopolitical expansion, and it would be highly motivated to prevent Beijing from gaining a strategic foothold in such a pivotal location. Contracts that were once promised to Chinese firms would likely be redirected to Western or allied companies, effectively shutting China out of the lucrative reconstruction market. This would be more than just a lost business opportunity, it would be a strategic containment of China's westward economic push. The vision of a seamless trade corridor under Chinese influence, stretching from Xinjiang to the Mediterranean, would be disrupted. It would force Beijing to seek more costly and less efficient alternative routes, diminishing the overall appeal and viability of the Belt and Road Initiative in the region. By controlling Syria, the United States would not only dictate the political future of the nation, but also hold a powerful veto over the economic ambitions of its chief global rival, ensuring that the new Silk Road does not run through Damascus without Washington's explicit permission. The establishment of a pro-Western government in Syria would do more than just alter political alignments. It would fundamentally redraw the military map of the Middle East. The country could be transformed into a major staging ground for American and Israeli military power, creating new and direct threats to their adversaries. Imagine the deployment of advanced United States missile defense systems like THAAD or Patriot batteries, capable of neutralizing threats but also gathering sensitive radar intelligence deep inside neighboring countries. The presence of sophisticated surveillance and signals intelligence outposts would give the United States and Israel an unprecedented real-time view of military activities in Iran and even southern Russia. For Iran, this would represent an existential threat. Instead of having a strategic ally on its flank, it would face a new front line. The distance that Iranian missiles would need to travel to reach key United States or Israeli targets would be drastically reduced. But conversely, Iran's own sensitive military and nuclear sites would be well within the range of short and medium-range missiles stationed in Syria. The potential for United States Special Operations Forces or other military personnel to be based just across the border from Iran would dramatically increase pressure on Tehran, limiting its room for maneuver and raising the stakes of any potential conflict. The buffer it once enjoyed would be gone. This new military reality would also be deeply concerning for Russia. While the primary threat would be aimed at Iran, the presence of advanced United States intelligence gathering platforms in Syria would inevitably sweep up data on Russian military operations in the Caucasus and the Black Sea. It would place NATO-aligned military infrastructure uncomfortably close to Russia's southern defensive perimeter. This forward posture would allow the United States to project power not only into the Levant, but also northward, challenging Russia in what it considers its near abroad. The strategic equation would be irrevocably altered, creating a more tense and volatile military environment for all actors involved. Beyond the direct military and strategic losses, the fall of Syria to a United States-Israeli sphere of influence would trigger a profound diplomatic and economic isolation for their rivals. For years, the Syrian issue has been a key topic at the United Nations and other international forums, a platform where Russia, and to a lesser extent China, could assert their role as indispensable players in Middle Eastern security. They used their veto power and diplomatic weight to shield the Assad regime and position themselves as power brokers. With a pro-Western government in Damascus, their relevance on this crucial issue would evaporate overnight. They would be shut out of the political process, their voices marginalized in discussions about the future of the region. This diplomatic isolation would be acutely felt by Iran. Tehran would find itself almost completely surrounded by states aligned with the United States. Iraq's government remains fragile and influenced by Washington. Turkey is a NATO member, Jordan is a key United States ally, and Israel is its sworn enemy. The loss of its only dependable state ally in the Arab world would complete this strategic encirclement. This would make Iran far more vulnerable to a tightened sanctions regime, as illicit trade and financial routes running through Syria would be closed off. The economic pressure, already immense, could become unbearable, further crippling its economy and potentially fueling domestic unrest. For Russia and China, being sidelined in the Middle East would have broader consequences. It would demonstrate the limits of their ability to protect allies and challenge American primacy. Other nations in the region might conclude that aligning with Moscow or Beijing is a risky bet, leading them to gravitate back towards the security umbrella offered by Washington. The economic fallout would also be significant, as Western-aligned governments would favor Western companies for trade and investment, further isolating Russian and Chinese economies from this vital market. The end result would be a reassertion of American dominance in a new era of diplomatic and economic isolation for its chief competitors. As we have seen, the hypothetical shift of Syria into the United States-Israeli orbit is far more than a simple change of government. It is a tectonic event with the power to shatter long-standing alliances, cripple strategic ambitions, and redraw the geopolitical map of the entire Middle East. For Russia, it would mark a humiliating retreat, diminishing its global stature. For Iran, it would be a near-fatal blow to its regional strategy, leaving it isolated and encircled. And for China, it would represent a significant check on its economic expansionism. The web of consequences is intricate, touching upon everything from military deployments to diplomatic influence and economic lifelines. However, we must also acknowledge that such a scenario is fraught with immense peril and uncertainty. The process of regime change itself would likely be bloody and chaotic, potentially unleashing new waves of instability, terrorism, and refugee crises that could destabilize the entire region for years to come. Furthermore, one must never underestimate the reactions of the powers being pushed out. A cornered Russia or a threatened Iran might not retreat quietly. They could lash out in unpredictable and dangerous ways, seeking to spoil the new order in other parts of the world, escalating tensions to a breaking point. The victory could very well trigger a new, more dangerous phase of conflict. Ultimately, the Syrian chessboard reminds us that in the great game of geopolitics, there are rarely clean endings. Every move creates a new set of challenges, every action a reaction. While the prospect of a pro-Western Syria may seem advantageous from one perspective, it underscores the profound interconnectedness of our world, where a power shift in one nation can trigger a cascade of unforeseen consequences across the globe. The future of Syria remains unwritten, but understanding the stakes helps us appreciate the delicate and often dangerous balance that defines our times. The game is far from over.